There you all are. Once again, I'm James Sherry, curator for December-January. I first met Miles Champion many years ago and enjoyed his fast-speaking readings immensely. I published his book, 3 Bell Zero, in 2000, and it always amazed me that Miles could quote my own poetry to me at length, and the poetry of many others at length. And he probably remembers where we met and what was going on. He's a writer who can not only write, but stores the poetry of others for recall. Miles is a fountain of poetry. Yet he often takes years to write a single poem. And when he's done with all that work, it often reads like he said it at the moment. Quote, "It would be false to say that a skilled naturalist can satisfy a whole group of philosophers." I'll let you choose what satisfy means. But speaking of the endless possibilities of ideas and the limited reality we have to engage, Miles carefully chooses the options that aren't often in daily play. His poem, The Seedless Eyebrow Pencils, speaks of a thing that has no seeds to be seeded. Seeding real events to possibilities that don't have physical analogs makes me read more physicality into his words. Surrealism and language-centered poetry both utilize these constructions, and Miles moves back and forth between them. His early poetry quoted phrases from other poets out of context to make a phrase that hasn't ever been a phrase before. Even some of the more recent ones, such as The Seedless Eyebrow Pencils, has a phrase from one of my own poems, quote, "buffeting the air," which continued, "buffeting the air with her smacks," referring to kisses. But for Miles, I'm hoping he now has that uneasy feeling that I have when reading his poetry, that something is happening, but you're not quite sure what it is, except that it's happening in words. These brief appropriations seem less evident in recent poems, quote, "where lyrics are written with a slight chuckle or in great agony." But for us, the readers, it is neither. Rather, Miles' presence in a space that's both unknown and familiar. His work is friendly, with a hint of threat, that something really might happen, said fear stemming from the way every word, after all that time of accordion air, has lighted on a firm foundation of writing with the unfamiliar. Oh, wait, isn't that what we call poetry? Please welcome Miles Champion.
Thank you so much, James. James is unfortunately talking about a previous version of myself that possessed a memory, which has been recently erased by the arrival of twin boys about 4.5 months ago. They're on the other side of the door with friends and neighbors and family. I'm on this side of the door, and we're going to hope for the best. I thought I'm going to read 10 poems from this book called A Full Cone, which I feel guilty for doing because it came out in 2018. So the whiff of freshness has departed this work, but I didn't give a reading when the book was published, and I don't think I have since. So I hope I can be forgiven for doing so now. I'm going to start with an old poem about knitting, then read a more recent one about crabs, and then we'll take it from there. Blue bag. Shops can also be chips of foam, tubular yew to lay threads, or beans, many of which are chips of foam. Yarn and a suggested of needle and stitch to reading ball, 3 dots within, work out from never as colours in same sequence on the scarf. Calculate how of needle and stitch to armhole of needle and stitch to describe the placing at random on yoke reading ball, or in blocks to these are the most commonly used, a medium hot oven thick pulp. Lay strips of objects into knitting, the most commonly, lay strips if necessary, remembering that dense bead on what you were seaming, hot oven the most commonly. Crabs are back. Crabs haven't quite caught on, perhaps they refuse to. The idea that they are genial supports is merely a stagey tableau. A stone crab no one sees is rotated. It fills a major gap. A team of scientists on a remote island must find a way to stop gigantic mutant crabs with human-type eyes rather than stalked ones from reproducing and invading the world's oceans. Enormous birds and bees encourage the scientists to compete. Jules Verne enters. Roger Corman works on his blood. The thoroughly evil Dr. Bang unscrews his artificial arm and releases his peeler. Made of H-bombs and twine, it's universally disliked. The ubiquitous phantom crab lives in the catacombs of the opera house, the ghost crab billows to attract mates. These pods join in. As a crab swims sideways, it clicks or snaps a fake pod onto the inner surface of a joint to optimize lift. The black tips of large pens make me sick, but most crabs are chilled, packed into styrofoam boxes with a supply of pots for recreational use. Evidence suggests that settlers wore simple crabs to protect their feet. Crabs in an area without grass can beef up a dull scene. Initially pink, Van Gogh turned red as he yelled at his sponge, then he cut off a piece of algae. Rembrandt moved a crab with his van. Some painters operate a skipjack boat, draping a roller over the side, but most people decorate crabs casually on a plate or at the beach. Virginia was one of the first wives to be considered aquatic because she snorkeled after meals. The miserly Eugene Krabs will do almost anything for profit. He quietly goes about his business, slathering sunscreen on sections of drainpipe as if you weren't there. Sebastian the Crab has released 2 reggae albums for children. He plays organ, piano, and clavinet, and is one of the only instrumentalists on the crustacean music scene. Already in great demand, he's also available as a beanbag. Crabs in the air vent as they go by. On clear nights, English crabs can see the moon reflected in a beer can. The moon beats and flaps, causing the tides. The plankton mimic is both fascinating and likable. When he drifts into a pet store, normally docile crabs yodel and cavort until the whole store is in an uproar. Aristophanes co-authored the multi-volume, 10 legs? No way. In Greek mythology, the helmet crab was rewarded with a skateboard after mocking the special pleading of the evolutionists. Rudyard Kipling is said to have liked his crabs just so. Jorge, a fry cook, is hard to know. He may be damaged in the process of grasping a potato. He responds to changes in mayo. I like to think that a crab's apron can be pulled back to reveal an area in the rear where work is easier to do with your hands than with any implement provided. Some people get crabs on the lips and face. It's no wonder that fancy restaurants provide napkins and wet wipes for customers who are lucky enough to have developed the habit of eating before they become weak and lethargic and eventually die. A box crab physically smothered the research bug. Frozen crabs are okay. This brilliant reddish-orange crab is actually Will Ferrell. Junkies steal crabs, menus float. Crab art is feasible but difficult because, aside from mosaics on aquarium floors, crab images don't like to get wet. Carol Orms of Crabworks has the best time in my apartment. The secret of success, says a fisherman who was caught in the 1940s, is to go overboard in a hot air balloon. Success is a job in New York. Okay, how do I switch that off? Rachel? Tech support. Anyone? Well, let's see. How do I switch off these bings? Sorry, just keep going. Success is a job in New York. Sorry for my technophobic status. Multitudes are self-contained on the 8th floor. The nouns and verbs take all my coats at the door. The strangest captive is a white balloon interested in working with markers. The super is given to taking these pills. His feet hurt and his area is slummy. If you stand behind him at the parade, you can see his curious monuments. One of the showpieces is a turkey with a Greek inscription on its wishbone. The message is a little confusing, says a curator at the Smithsonian. Gloria is at Cooper Union. She left her rocky bluff with deep regret. Mike Doyle came out of the sea to find her, but had no documents to show the gaffer. Bing Crosby had to study Smetana on a cargo flyer out of Frankfurt. 4 years later, he came down in Berlin, a patient philosophical fellow. The keeper of the keys is a nuisance. So are the locks that guard stores of narcotics. Most architects can't tell a submaster from a diphtheria antitoxin. Teresa's daughter has a spot on her chin. Last night it glowed like the back of a stove. On Friday morning, it will be roped off for routine lubrication and dusting. 11 tulips came out yesterday in Queens alone. Perfect casts were made behind a tight screen and the originals put in storage. About 5% of people use air. Terry boils it for the Duchess of Kent, who is 80 now and lives on Pell Street above the new post office. 2 thin-haired ladies had a great summer putting up the frame for the Kaufman building. They rarely seemed to talk on the job. When they did, it was less than riveting. John Godfrey is in charge of street repair. He can and sometimes does get lyrical, writing thousands of pocket-sized gospels about sidewalks and how to maintain them. An outside staircase leads crookedly up to a secretary who waits for him there. He dictates correspondence in a housecoat and special shoes with 1-inch verandas. White-collar lads who have never seen him sometimes pray or sit in mute contemplation. Countless thousands of long hairs have converted. Parents in the neighborhood are distressed. If the city sky darkens under storm cloud, Edith Wetmore gives out free umbrellas. Her moist eyes are open to the public. She gets floods of letters every year. Ogden Nash once mailed this very stanza, which he wrote when he was on holiday. An early version had the full Met cast inherit a pesky underground stream. The requirement was to make it rocky without blocking its literary source. Verbal fog. The patch has a color analogous to the problems toothache causes, altering face. Thus it can be said that the root of our dissatisfaction reaches up to reality, like phenomena in visual space. If I had given it some drug whose solution would at long last give us the right to do arithmetic, we might begin. Sweating cubism out. Delaunay spent January of 1912 under a photograph in his notebook. He was anxious. Leger had cubified smoke. Braque called. Delaunay, always alert, began to speak. Braque, quick, what would happen if popular songs started to become abnormally long and musical instruments even cleverer? One gets the rigidity of clarinets, but look, a single guitar in any group should have its own purely pictorial deformations so that the eye is musicalized. Under the influence of Cézanne and fruit in general, Braque handled things in a very concrete way, taking liberties with some stimuli provided by the studio. His method pleased him. A line completely disappeared, leaving a note behind it. A passing plane grew smaller and less important while Delaunay edged the volume up. As a group, they were imposing, bold, atmospheric, but whereas Braque retained the smoke, Delaunay used puffs. The fact that Leger was impressed by the size of the clouds between the young painters was to affect musical iconography for several weeks. The new style evolved at the Steins' house. One of the Steins was buying cigarettes in a common urge. The softer packets fascinated Braque. He sensed a new kind of space in which the fans and instruments could be made to synthesize. Lolita in Wonderland. I step leisurely towards surprises. I limit work to custom jobs inside a doll. Well, I'm getting messages coming up here. I'm going to ignore them and hope that all is well. James, you can just flag me if something is going awry, but I will assume they don't pertain to me. Lolita in Wonderland. I step leisurely towards surprises. I limit work to custom jobs inside a doll. I shake in my shoes when a cocktail develops. I've got to act tiny with a network for dabbing at contracts to get rid of germs. My eyeball squeaks like a balloon. Sleep with its room key dangling from a yawn arrives at my face with a writ for non-payment of working features while persistent night opens to swallow a filter. I tweak loose the threshold. There's ample space for a negative image, but it's quiet and uptight, like when a self-made reclining nude said "fuck you" to Picasso. The best money catches nice immediate drugs. A bent cock draws back a leafy smell. I should see if my corkscrew has a biological use. Why was Mozart covered in thick fur? Does smoke have children? Which armpit toy is mostly glass? I smash through the picturesque where the cows go shaboom to suck on a hatchet, might go looking for the fish slice. It's what happens when a gunman creates a lipstick. It feels great in your hand, then you lose it. Kurosawa's a shrub, Hammett a rinsing glass. I film my teeth. In Sweden once, this guy jiggled shrimps in yogurt, contracted leprosy and became a nun. His father had a silly name for welding struts to a can. Ice cubes in paraffin, the dishwasher crossbow, the bullet with increased leisure. I seem first to shoot and then exploit a photogenic smear. I wake to a tiny church bell, bring it to my lips and say a blanket word. An orderly hoses a jigsaw. I bake a sponge. I take down a glossary of forms. I go mad before nature and am withdrawn at lunch. I teach death using my own end to point to the mechanism while my keeper straddles the butt piece. I plait thongs until they give a vague impression of belt. I sing the body leather. Actual contact would make any scientist dirty up there, fidget with a bar of soap, turn a few cartwheels, borrow a vacuum cleaner, fetch some ether, make the dead speak, then get lost, return to invented childhood, become a dreamer, walk into Torquay, miss the gig, hear the grass grow, feel out of it, hide behind a lettuce, know all things, go back inside, climb the social ladder, dick an actor, cancel the milk, ring Charlie Corngold, mistake a lipless jug for a quasi-theatre, bleach a pair of jeans, help a jockey quit by using the last of the Vaseline, ask if Wabe is stone, hold a piece of it the wrong way, less than 6 inches from a natural bowl with a stage. The plastic world won't keep. Desserts turn into stiff waves. A monster decorates the labyrinth. Two deck chairs full of rock plants beguile a small deer. A bit of flex spills out of a bra. I paint it pink. Down in the ping pong room, I rotate my hands as if screwing a moth into jogging pants. I get my tools to step out while my privacy guards the flashlight. A bead constrains the sweat on my face. The moth fits the brief. It sits back while I explain what prose is, activating the plot in the process. I incubate a musical phrase in my mouth, separating the white from the notes. The song expands priapically, a ball sometimes resting on it. A workman patches the leak back from a mental check mark, an arc on dribble. The hermit crab, I concede, is a self-involved lookout at best. The ancients thought its meat was a guest. In medieval days, they contemplated its bust. This might sound silly, but I gape at sculptors, find their workshops attractive. I dream that my special hole can machine a vegetable. Day, I give my sweater to a girl on the beach. The shape of a custard pie looms over Broadway. Fabulous, grief-proof, unreal. Film space could learn a lot from puff pastry. Air is sexy, the kind that inflates. Popcorn repeats itself. The critic picks and discards seeds while a stock type studies the camera box, prospecting for ingredients. I masticate from a disinterested vantage point. I come to a head in which events are shown, tilting the final scene so the credits roll. This is a list of things that happen to or that describe a list or that a list does. It's called the list. The list looks sexually big. The list tries to reproduce the poet's images. The list rocks on the waves like a bug. The list is fog to me. The dew grieves for the list, the arable list. The list brings consolation. The list is chirping now. The list eats more than soup. The list farts heroically. The list has coffee with Bill and Elaine. The list takes the bull by the horns. The list is black and blue. The patchwork list. The list creates new jobs. The list is mistress and medium. The list describes a cone. The list weeps for abstractions. The list is scribbled out in bad Greek. The clever housewife's list. The list is nothing but an ape or a piece of protoplasm. The list finds a cylinder. The list adds a scoop of ice cream. The list shaves alone. The overhead list. The list is no garbo. The quick drying list. The list a la mode. The list is shot with pink. The list has a dupe made in some lab in Soho. The list relents and goes downstairs. The list marries Neil something or other, the prominent list. The list beyond the list, the V-neck list. The list has shaving cream in its left ear. The list regales the crew. The list wears a glass breastplate. The list cantilevers out. The list got rid of those jugs. The list sells obscene prints. The unweanable list. The list already knows De Chirico. The list comes back from Brittany with maquettes. The wicker list. The list paints its idea. The candied list. The list replaces discussion. The list has a sweet tooth. The list meets God in space. The list is an easy choice. Excuse me, just a bit of water. As one does, this is for Vivian, who's on the other side of the door, and will be 11 in February. For Vivian, I must warn you that I once caught the top of my sock on a crazy pot with a red rubber spout. When I put my foot down, pedals came out. And a neat segue into A Bike in the Hedge for Tom and Val. Certainly, we can all see the bankers. We just can't afford to park by the railings when we can follow this great loose hold-all to the rainbow's foot by way of the world outside. The piping bullfinch is merely a confirmation, but before we reach it, I have some congruous fruit reduced to spirits, which go straight to De Quincey, who at last perfects his influence on vintage growth. High mauve absolution, repairs worn, fortifications, dates reshuffle for those who can survive 6 months in an old-fashioned carrot cake. Fraulein cannot bake. The sad skinhead is obsessed with the Brontes. Anne hated too much light. Charlotte was almost dark, and Emily sculpted grotesque candles. One green one had obviously been smoking. The stray butts asked a dog whether proper extroverts irritate the nostrils or ears. The smell of music from behind the spheres strikes us as ordinary. Captain Zoom occasionally rises when his chair is sent to photograph birds. Like other men, his work is never on the shelves at home. In his own words, no one tends to hurt anyone but himself with a pencil. Orange tips and red admirals spot paintbrushes with their antennae and powder. The egg with the radio sweeps for tea and toast along the Thames. It knows that a cup is looking to procure some boiling water for its friends. One of the reasons why I don't have a huge amount to show for myself since A Full Cone came out is that I've spent most of my free time in 2019 working on 2 other books, Clark Coolidge and Larry Fagan's collaborative prose, The Not So Stories, which will be published next year, and Larry's selected poems, Peaches and Gravy, which is just out from Cuneiform Press. And I'll just say that I had a very clear idea of how I wanted this book to be, but thanks to Kyle Schlesinger and Richard Tuttle, who did the cover, the book exceeds my hopes and my expectations. And I want to read a short piece of Larry's, not from Peaches and Gravy, but from what I hope will eventually be a companion book, a selected prose. This is, well, from a dream journal of sorts. It's called Fits of Dawn Movie. Our car breaks down in the desert near San Bernardino. Susan, all of a sudden endowed with the skills of a grease monkey, fixes it in a jiffy, and we drive on to Burbank to attend a banquet at Warner Brothers Studios. I'm wearing a white tux and Susan a lemon chiffon prom dress. Her hair is in hideous antebellum sausage curls. Get rid of them, I whisper through clenched teeth. Jack Warner rises to toast me. I knew you could bring it in, kid. He's referring to Joe Chiravelo's great abstract poem, Fits of Dawn. Joe's widow, Rosemary, has signed a contract to turn Fits into a major motion picture. I've brokered the deal with help from Rosemary's mob connections. Susan has morphed into Jean Tierney, circa 1950, and her hair is awful too. I feel an asthma attack coming on. I'm going to read 4 short sections from a sequence called Orders, which I initially thought of as a kind of serial novel in poem form. And there's a protagonist called Moose who makes a compelling entrance in the second poem. The problem is that he hasn't come back since, so I'm a little high and dry, although I trust Moose to do what's right. Moose, if you're out there listening. 1-syllable words in America justify the perplexing sprawl of its 10 acres. Poe, another Baltimore word, creaks on its somnolent P up in the south. Mike became a public street where people were earning a C+. His trolley car was precisely what he had taught some circles. Pairs and triangles are the Richardsons, a family of categories or kinds. Put less obscurely, this artist said that towards the middle of the evening at a party. On other occasions, what seems an emergence, not unlike birth. Breakfast consisted of orange slices reached by an extraordinary railway. Buster Keaton listened to Al Mayles get on and off. His own background proved to be a sumptuous affair with great chunks of valuable steak and a quantity of beer in a hollow square. A long line in the role of a sinister but very thin passenger rose and followed me as one. 2 chops and salad with the necessary loops, semicircular pieces of incredibly wonderful fruits galloped up to the caboose with the pronunciamento that who I am and what my luggage buffs to a duplicate window had been derailed. I gritted my lounge suits. Moose came down with 3-horse toots. I made pie. It took shape at night. My crust was brilliant. I could read by its light. Smooth dough, paint. Jackson Pollock needed the plate. He had work, a big picture to beat. His canned goods stood at his feet. The next day he borrowed a cup. He told me between sobs that it came from Europe. One of Lao Tzu's favorite images describes the existence tissue as verb mist. In it, we can feel presence carry words back to their source in the first man, root breath. A noun, miraculously and inexplicably welling up in grammatical space, is simply ink, which is a liquid. Hence, mind as mirror animates that space to deepen our vision, and poetry is the most fundamental ontological basin. Poets often felt the black text itself. A classical Chinese poem is somewhat misshapen. Mentioning Larry and thinking of dear departed friends, I hope some people will join me in raising a glass to Ted Greenwald, who would have been 78 today. And of course, who co-founded the Ear In series, which is the ancestor of the Segue series we know and love today, co-founded by Charles Bernstein in 78 or 79. And I know someone will know which of those 2 years it is. About the telegraph for Norma Cole. Thomas and I are fixing a wireless on the roof of our garage. We have to get a stepladder, put pink gills on its umbrella, keep discipline, store up fats, watch for the shaggy manes. Struggle develops flavor. Hats add 3 inches to our height. That's got magic beaten. Our tools and hides came right out when shoes began. Turkeys loathe menial work books. Some Hindus, they can be abstract in American art. Gauguin wooed them with limes. Melville sucked their juice through a great white Venetian blind. One finds unspeakable flotsam in stocks. Byron in Geneva. Polidori's diary shows that Byron pestered him for a snack on June the 22nd. Have one by all means, said the young doctor, but follow it with a hot bath, a purge, and violent sweat-inducing exercise. Byron was fat and weighed in at 14.5 stones. Shelley, an exceptionally strong swimmer, had been able to bring his weight down to 10 stones and 6 pounds by avoiding dry land for almost 4 years. So excited was he by his exploit that he invited Byron to a vegetable dinner. This suited Byron, who, as a lord, was entitled to wear a substantial keel that made him look thinner. Around 4 or 5 o'clock, therefore, Shelley, who was privately built, rented a house on the shore, and Byron arrived in Chamonix, confident of being able to secure sufficient leafy greens at about 6. There are different views about the quality of the meal, but it was in fact substantial and square apart from a deformed potato. This the 2 poets mashed without milk. Byron was slightly impaired by 6 bottles of claret and large quantities of brandy. Shelley, despite an addiction to water, couldn't drink at all. Just one of those eggs. The song I have chosen makes the best of a bad situation, a printing error with a slightly nasal quality scholars of dialect think you can catch by latching onto a body of music and damping it with a Harman mute. The sound took root in England, where spelling such words as joy and play was considered a form of insanity. William the Conqueror had already pronounced tres as tray after spilling imported beer on his vocabulary. German people say King Harold of Harold's liquor store allowed the Vikings to settle and come back the next day for more. If you play back the raw tapes left behind by the longships, there is a pop some 32 bars long with wide wooden shutters over the vowel. To this day, language experts have to creosote almost everything in the whole field of song. Pipelines pronounced peepleen carry singers up the Seine as far as Paris, where lyrics are written with a slight chuckle or in great agony. Kids play marbles or softball in perfect harmony, and even churchmen subscribe to downbeat. What we came to call jazz obviously sensed that the Bible was heavy and largely pre-World War II. I heard that the pastor thought a newcomer's poll was something you blew. And 2 more to go. This is called Still Life, and it's for William Fuller, who I think we're both of an age where we can out ourselves as Van de Graaff generator fans without too much shame coming back on us. Still Life. Perpetual entropy, I want to paint you, as do my hands. There are advantages and disadvantages for each of them. One has dark conifers and scabs of outcropping rock. David got a bit freaked on platform 6 of Derby Midland Station. A group called the Hot Cross Buns had affixed a tailpin to the incoming Aquarian age. The free music punters watched it quiver at a tenuous angle. There were groupies. I'm sorry for laying all this on you, but at least it shows trust. Anyhow, Hugh hid in the back of the truck to escape from the mob. Inflatable thoughts about the individual came to blows. A chameleon was furious. The colour of the dirt hadn't waited long enough against the red of the hubs. Hugh excreted glue, which I drew. The roadies had to zigzag to avoid a shoe. Perhaps all topics must transfer course to blend with the view. I could plead socks need a junction switch, which I do. The equipment sucks. Every bagpipe donor knows it's all a question of the right valve. David's flute concerns us too far in and purple. It won't leave his chin. Guy gave me a soft-boiled drug he had road tested. I gave him silver goggles and a splash of pink paint when his face once blanked out for 3 days at Susie's place. I'll finish with a poem that itself was finished about half an hour before the twins were born. It's for Rachel. It would be false to say that a skilled naturalist can satisfy a whole group of philosophers, but it is true that the zoologist caught in flagrante almost always suffers as the eyes and ears dedicate their descriptions to the fancy thinker who takes every precaution and replaces it with birdsong. I regret not being an insect who can capture feelings on translucent engines or turbines or wings. A rooster in high heels carefully tests a slab of marble while passing clouds dress and pose in the Greek manner. Love itself is kept in the Louvre and copied by Manet, who opens a miraculous exhibition in our private lives. Dante and Petrarch take notice of it and push their pens to discover a literary circle that enhances perfection on the human plane. Corks in the sea foam will tell you that living together has an active power which empties into adventure and change. Thank you very much. You want me to unmute, Jane? Unmute?
That's good. Yeah, you should mute. Thank you, Miles. That was great. I noticed if anyone else was watching that, the closed captioning, which is our first effort in that direction, had some divergence from Miles. Actually, I'd like to see that. Izzy, if you've got it at the end, maybe we should post these obscure changes that the computer did to Miles' work. But now let's take a 5-minute intermission, during which we'll ask you to donate $5 to the readers, and all donations will go to pay the poets. And then we'll come back with Lauren Whitehead's reading. Welcome back, and thank you for your donations. As always, all contributions to the Segue Reading Series go directly to pay the poets, and I think that was worth something. So please, if you haven't donated already, do so at the end of the program, and thank you for those who have donated. We noted that the closed captioning was giving Miles a run for its money, or his money. You have the option to turn that off in the lower right-hand side of your screen if you don't want to see it. And now on to our second reader of the afternoon. Lauren Whitehead is a poet, prose writer, and dramaturge in New York who came to my attention at a Segue reading she gave with Mahogany Brown a few years ago. I wanted to keep up with her work, so I invited her to read at Segue today. Lauren is a writer who loves details and cosmology, both, from atoms to galaxies, threading through blackness. Quote, every atom on my head was a black man, before every dread ends in galaxy, spinning in and in on itself until it splits. And love is a politics too. Quote, unrequited love is also a wading pool, warm enough to bathe in, but too shallow to get wet. Still, there have been fools who have drowned in less. And gender politics, quote, everyone is a man if you're a man. But as she also says, not everything is sex. She scales up and down the frames of reality, connecting them easily as if they were part of the same universe, rather than the fragmented and isolated frames of modernist detail. The characters she barely alludes to, from an addict to basketball players to bartenders, to a woman having a panic attack at Macy's, to quote, the girl who needs to know her 3 slices were still less than half, to the bag of Cheetos that carries the reader through Lauren's set of pixelated scenes that all fly along a narrative that barely tells any story at all. Lauren's feints fly in the face of finishing. She tells just enough, barely enough, to know what she's saying before moving on. These deft gambits remind me of abstraction, but they're not that either, as she threads her way through real politics, real ghettos, actual family life, and fluttering language ploys without wanting to stop even for a minute to let the reader rest. Quote, stop me if you've heard this murder before, unquote. In spite of the details, we don't see the details we expect to read, but rather a reference to, quote, the black sun is not safe and still. Can't you see? Can't you see? Somewhere in the story, there has already been plenty enough reason for him to die tonight. Lauren Whitehead, poet, plays the phrases that transport us in the direction of meaning, and she expects we'll do some of the meaning making ourselves. Please welcome her to our Zoom frame, Lauren Whitehead.
James, thank you. That was such a lovely introduction. It's always so humbling to hear somebody else talk about your work because you're like, is that what I'm doing? And then you're like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So thank you for that. And thank you, Miles. I love a poet that begs you to keep up and doesn't care if you get left behind. And I really appreciate all that you offered. And I'm just so thrilled to be sharing this Zoom room with you. It feels appropriate to start with a pandemic poem. My father is an essential worker, and so I feel the anxiety in so many ways, and dare I say, maybe a little bit of hope as we see a vaccine and maybe some potential for this country to do right by the people who have been risking their lives for the whole time. So it was already dangerous. Working the 2 to 12 shift, driving home in the shiny dark under the sleepless moon, curling his car around suburban back roads almost every day, pushing drowsily his nice enough to not get pulled over SUV, iced coffee, sugared and milked into cake. It was already dangerous, diabetic as he is, for him to be smoking all these cigarettes in the empty parking lot, laughing and missing all these meals even while working the 2 to 12 a.m. shift at the high-end grocery, where the cured meats have their own specified domain, hanging hocks of pork sliced thin by a woman in starched whites and a paper hat, the grocery where you build your own six-pack, and also where my dad manages the young and undereducated smokers in the business of facing groceries as they come out of the box. You probably haven't wondered whose hands make known the difference between scented and unscented garbage bags, which hands attend the 200 plus flavors of tea in aisle 3 of your local. You probably pass unasking by the perfected symmetry of toothpastes and soaps neatly packed, straight-backed as dancers, but it's my dad, working the near night shift, stacking organic frozen pizzas in a cooler label out so you don't mistake your vegan for your 4 cheese. He is a connoisseur of cabbage, a kale fluffing man who knows each condiment by its color-coded brand, and it was already laborious throwing box after box off a forklift, hauling pallets of pesto and pasta sauce. It was already heavy, but now all the extra loads of alcohol, ammonia, bleach, dual action disinfectant wipes and toilet paper, all the near night canned meats and hard cheeses and frozen everything. He's already 62, the ideal vintage for an otherwise indiscriminate virus which lives for days maybe on hard surfaces like linoleum grocery floors or metal grocery racks or aluminum soap cans or lipstick stained wine glasses haphazardly left on shelves all over his high-end market by tipsy white women who don't believe in crisis until it hits their homes. It was already hard not to bring his work home, but now it's more dangerous. This already thankless and unseen and ignorable work. It was too much even before all this impatience, all this insistence, even before all this aggressive fear made him miserable, visible, vulnerable, essential. Not everything is sex. Okay. Tell that to the palm of this Black man's hand, ever so slightly cupped and carrying in its bend the fingertips of another Black man, both of them, arms stretching upward toward the sky, measuring their reach against one another on a basketball court in Brooklyn in spring, okay? Spring. And when I say spring, I mean bee buzzing near a pink bud, almost bursting spring, tantric spring, everyone outside in 3/4 sleeves despite the virus buzzing near our tongues, spring. So you can't tell me it's not sex, because it's not sex. The risk of all this tenderness, all this giving of ourselves, all this inside on the outside, open, vulnerable. I know sex when I see it, and I see it everywhere. Lips on the nipple of a soft serve, an arm fist deep in a grocery store shelf digging for the last can of garbanzo beans. It is not a menage a trois. These three men snuggled in the front seat of a moving van, singing bachata, dancing from the hips up in the window, open, throats open, their whole necks to the wind, reckless, reckless, I tell you, full on abandon. So say what you will about transmission, about fluid, skin to skin, about the necessary things that make the deed. I don't care, because it's spring, and I've never seen anything so intimate as this touch still taken in the face of an apocalypse. I've been working on this a manuscript that's trying to piece together the relationship between, the endless relationship between Blackness, sex, oblivion, death, and the sort of political landscape of the United States. And every time I feel as if I'm getting closer to getting my hands on all that slipperiness, it sort of evades me. And so this is a poem trying not to, maybe trying not to grasp it so much. This is on black holes. The magic maker is a man. Everyone is a man. If you are a man, you have been emptied into before, whether you recognize your body, cavernous or not. A mirror is a wading pool. You can drown in it if you aren't careful. Desire has unknown depth, and it can swallow you whole through the glass. Unrequited love is also a wading pool, warm enough to bathe in, but too shallow to get wet. Still, there have been fools who have drowned in less. Mark the man, the good book says. Fisher of man, the good book says. Rib of the man, the good book says, and woe be tied to the gaping omission. Here, the mirror is a man in which I recognize myself deeply, deeply. I reach into him deeply, and from his throat retrieve my own wet lung, which pumps like the cosmos pulsing, spitting out magic, running through the wrist of this existing. And if I were to razor it, my blood might milk a new way. Stardust to stardust, we all fall down. In the beginning, there was the pussy, tucked in the thicket of black galaxy. And from that galaxy came the planet, dressed in every ring, and the rings flashed fancy. The ring kept the black planet safe from return to the thicket from which he was spat. When you put your hands together to pray, each inside is an imperfect mirror for the other. Each hand is a scaffold for the other. Each says, hold me, and I will hold you back. The space between palms is light years. When they clap, a supernova, blood bright. A black hole is a hallway with no lights on. A cracked mirror is a black hole, unreachable and already gone before you get there. The mirror is a black hole. A pussy is a black hole. A black boy is a black hole. Dangerous, cavernous, close. Every atom on my head was a black man before. Every dread ends in galaxy spinning in and in on itself until it splits. How I nurture its length, how I oil and oil each inch bright. The manuscript that I'm working on is sometimes a little in the air, like that poem was, but often it's really grounded in just these stories of grief and familial complicated, the complicated love of family. And so I am just going to read a couple of those more grounded poems, and then maybe we'll go off into the ether again. We'll see. Okay. Chicken for the famished. 1. The first time there was chicken, I'm sure, which is what sent me to the bathroom in the apartment my aunt didn't own. Where was she? Not watching us, my cousin, my brother, and I, porcelain masks on every wall and butterflies and rich red carpet, or was it? Chicken, though, for sure, and me on the toilet then taking my time and not locking the door. We were family, so there was chicken. We were family, so there was no need to lock the door to the bathroom where I went to have my time till the knob turned clockwise, or was it just my cousin who was not making a mistake, who was a man now, or so the court say after he stole over and over the cars he could find with doors unlocked, like my door unlocked, virgin mound above my thighs. He giggled when I said, someone's in here, as if it weren't me, his cousin. He shut the door then and for a time left me to my time again, chicken, while I watched the door knob turn again, him come in again, close the door behind him, heard the door lock, or was it what he wanted to make me nervous about getting up, about my virgin mound, my pants at my ankles, my time to be undone? Get out, he snickered, left. I thought to waddle to the door, but didn't. Chicken, just heard the knob rattle and giggle in the boy man's throat as he entered my time again and again, poking my budding tits and giggling and rushing in and out while my big brother watched from the hallway, waiting as we always did for him, the oldest, to tell us what to do too. We're family, so there's chicken. And my cousin brought the chicken. We were grown now, and he knew there's never enough food at a Black family funeral. My cousin was out of jail, home for the first Christmas, for the first time, and we weren't happy he brought chicken. No one asked him to get it. The repast for all of us, grown now, and lit up like glitter on a porcelain mask, so we ate, because granddad had been drinking since my uncle died in '94, and drunk as we were, we knew he would be drunker. It was his wife after all. It was near midnight after all. It was a long porcelain day, and we needed him to eat, and my cousin brought chicken for the fam, chicken for the famished, chicken no one asked for, but my grandpa was all lit up like wax on a hearse, and we knew that there would be a morning after to reckon ourselves against, so I salted the fleshy mound of chicken leg, spread the butter on the bread, ate with my grandfather while he begged me to live and be fed. 3, good and plenty fed, us cousins grown now, departed just past 12 to the suburban club in a town called Zion, where the drinks were cheap and chicken was served till 2, all of us, 5 pretty Blacks in a row, plus my brother, almost baby, but the biggest, while my white husband and me, all of us and me, and 3 cars and me, 3 drunks driving Route 41 where our uncle died, and just this way in '94, lush, morning, loud, music, we agreed, the louder, the better. Then we wouldn't hear so well our newest void, our hearts empty of matriarch. Fill us please with chicken and whiskey and the music loud enough to forget. Loud, we agreed, there should be shots of brown liquor. There should be no disrespect, but we need the jukebox now. No more porcelain radio hits. We need it to feel like Chicago, to feel like thunder, to feel almost like death on a rich red carpet. And my brother foot the bill, and all the girls brought their tits to the dance floor, and my husband told my cousin something true for the first time, and my other cousin looked at me, poked me in my shoulder, said, damn, I almost forgot you were my cousin, looking at you like you're not my cousin. And I hid then in an unlocked bathroom till somehow we shuttled, all of us, ourselves, our bodies, home. The House of My Kind, after Anne Sexton. There are hand-woven area rugs in the House of My Kind, mahogany handrails, film noir furniture. There's a bright, leafy melancholia in a pot by the window facing south. Here, a record runs over and over, a long, sad song sings the doors closed in the closet of my kind, only evening gowns and nowhere to go. Only impractical hats and hand-me-down silks, half-rate thrift shop holding grandma's left behinds. The house of my kind is a beggar's mansion, debt poor, paper rich, ragged dish racks, bleach splattered bath mats. In this dwell every mirror, shattered glass, and black as the open sea's deepest point. The deepest point is the roof to the house of my kind. Sponge painted, blood orange lipstick, coughed up lung in the bathroom of my kind, smoke of sadness seeping under the door unhinging, but never open. The manuscript is also trying to deal with blood in all these ways and what we inherit both politically and you know, personally. And so yeah, it's about inheritance. And so I'll just say that as I read this poem, which maybe I should tell you contains reference to suicide. Slightly less than half. Let's start with the black bass of me, eating 2 50-cent bags of puffy Cheetos on a grown-up gray couch, binge watching Intervention hour after hour after hour. That wouldn't be the beginning. The beginning would be me awake, wide, empty house, coffee on the perk, mid-ritual weed roll before I've had any breakfast. Everyone notices I am noticeably bigger. Bulking up, my favorite grandfather says, drunk and unaware of how his soothsaying, while true, is also painful. I get my own heavy truth tongue from him. My husband doesn't say everything he thinks. He is not the addict. I am, though it runs river messy through both of our families. We're thinking about having a baby. We're making plans to get pregnant. In the kitchen, after an argument over who ate more of the pizza, my husband, whose feelings I trust more than my own, sits alone and wonders where I am. I am in our bed, broken from hard sex, crying, my eyes puffy and thinking like an alcoholic. I haven't smoked weed in X number of days, where X equals a cheap and petty sobriety, where sobriety means 2 puffs doesn't really count, where I did and did not start recounting after that, where recounting would require honesty, where honesty would require that I also not drink, where not drinking and not smoking is just not an option. I am in the bedroom counting alcoholics in my family. I cannot name them. I cannot break their anonymity. Let's just say I take after them completely in skin and nose, in thigh and regret. Every empty 50-cent bag of Cheetos is tucked deep in the garbage can under apple cores and carrot shavings. Only the guilty hide their evidence. For a living, I encourage people to speak public their demon truths. Oh, what a lush lie I live. Speaking doesn't work, or if it does, how would I know? I haven't said a true word in years. My therapist yawned for the first 4 weeks we met. I am a boring repeat tragedy of my own making. The bartender draws a picture of a pizza cut into 6 equal slices, mumbles, "You're so mad, you're so mad," pointing and laughing at me, but I don't feel mad, I feel hungry. How many ibuprofen do you have to eat before you feel full enough to sink into an ocean? A bathtub's worth, I suppose. On the 8th day, God took a shower and said, maybe today is the day I walk out the door into this wide world of my own design. Let's call the 9th day Tuesday. Let's say Tuesday is an opportunity, an open calendar, an empty inbox, all potential inability. Let's say Cheetos are 2 for $1 and you have $1 and a well-set couch calling out your name like a lover. Even if you made the rain and the water, the trees and the grass, knowing what you could do, would you still go outside? My favorite documentary is about anorexics and bulimics who need coaches and therapists to help them eat cupcakes, who kill themselves at the end of all this. I admire their sadness, the dedication of it. I'm too hungry to die. We are in the kitchen arguing over who's more patronizing, the boy who knows a pizza can be cut into 6 equal slices, or the girl who needs to know that her 3 slices were still less than half. There is a draft for women in the US now. I can't tell if I feel more confident or condescended. Oh, silly politic. I'm so drunk and hungry, I could eat a bomb. Thank you. I don't remember what time I started. So James, will you just like raise your hand if the time is getting, you know, a little bit.
So I think you're fine for time.
Okay, cool.
We're enjoying it. So
okay, cool.
Have fun.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. I can't see anybody, so I hope you're with me. It's good to know that you're out there anyway. Okay, the manuscript also is trying to reckon with, it's trying to do a lot because I'm a Black woman in America and that's what we have to do, so many jobs. And one of the jobs is to attend to this notion of like the American dream. And so I'm writing a series of American dream poems and then a series of American reality poems. And so here are 2 of those. American Dream, Gutting, for Kevin Colwell. This time, my first white mentor is playing the good white in a cheap Southside America flick, wearing a leather fringe vest with his chest hair out, proud sitting, barnside on a wooden bench between two rosewood-colored wenches, each of them also bosom out and not wanting, but playing wanting, as wooden wenches are wont to do. To the left, in the same frame, is the dream's ingenue, a fully pregnant, rust-colored heifer hoisted up by leather straps so each of her hooves is lifted just inches above the dirt. Her everything splayed and swinging heavy, ready to release her groan. This calf who inside of her is hairy and hooved itself, already whole and ready to walk. Still, the mother sucker is too big to come out on its own. Lucky, the good white is here, knifed and ready to gut her, having practiced opening on so many of us already. The dream didn't predict I'd have a panic attack in Macy's. And yet, here I am, full on sweating on the third floor of the 34th Street flagship, having ridden the wooden escalator up and then up and down, again and again, carrying round and round my grandma's silk dresses in a too big paper bag addressed to someone else. And even though they fit perfect and snug around each of my hips and breasts, I am still frantic, rifling through racks in the department stores, searching for a different garment that will make me the most me in a magazine. And I don't know this now, but somewhere my delicate friend with eyes like an owl is also crying while looking at torture devices on the internet. And I wonder where Macy's ranks on that list with all its mirrors and aggressive light and the same songs blaring over and over, each floor running the same soundtrack and around. And when I text my husband to say, I had a mild breakdown in Macy's today, indignant, he replies, what were you doing in Macy's? As if it were Aleppo or Fallujah or some long off battleground where women and their kids are routinely skewered against some masked man's moneyed agenda, rounded up and hanged on racks to be sifted through by agencies who can't seem to count the dead. And who can we count on to see us if every mirror in this place is distorted on purpose? And how are we going to know if we're size 10 or size 12, and on whose scale and by whose standard if there is no standard? And aren't we all well in love with our own demise anyway? Because if not, what am I doing in Macy's, searching for some lovely thing to drape over my body and make me lovely on some overslicked page, smiling wide as if everything were just lovely, as if I wasn't somehow surviving this life by whatever grace my grandma sent to me in this paper bag, which has somehow made it to me anyway, wrong address and all. Maybe one more. I've been trying to think about, I'm a dramaturg, so I spend a lot of time thinking about narrative and the stories that we tell and the stories that are told to us and the stories that we accept as sort of like true or regular. And while I was working on this manuscript, the manuscript is really about the sort of repetitive nature of death that I experienced. I lost somebody in my life every winter for 4 winters in a row, February, December. And then in those summers, the sort of movement for Black lives was starting. And so I began to feel this sort of disoriented sense of like, I'm losing people and I'm in grief, but I'm having personal grief and political grief. And it just made me feel like all these stories were tied together and they were mine and they were not mine and they were everybody's who's Black or who loves. And so I wrote this poem about that, and maybe I'll end here. But before I do, I want to thank you for coming and thank you for listening and thank you for donating $5. Maybe I'll go to Macy's, try to find something lovely. I won't, I'm never going to Macy's again. Okay, this is One Night Epic. October 20th, I'm gonna get just a little sip of wine first, excuse me. Okay. One Night Epic. October 20th in 2014 was a Thursday. I don't know that for sure. I could look it up, but let's just say it was a Thursday. This story works better if it's a Thursday, because Thursday is the night the Black mother gets off. It's the night the Black mother curls up on a knockoff crate and barrel couch with 4 fingers of Cabernet in a long-legged wine glass, serving season 4 Olivia Pope in sweats and sweaters and popcorn for dinner, mourning a man still alive but gone nonetheless. You see where I'm going with this, right? Because it's Thursday, the woman is home alone, probably in love herself with 2 men, the gone man and the other gone man. 2 gone men, neither of which is her son, who she also loves and who is also somewhere out there not calling. Let's say, for story's sake, he's right about 17. Right about all his mama's wish men, but the Black mother is sad. Even the Black son can see that. So let's say he makes plans for Thursdays, loves his mother alone on Thursdays. For strictly narrative purposes, I should also add that the Black son has drug in his blood. The Black son has drug blood from a who knows when but long ago laced party he participated in. Let's call it junior prom. Let's say there's a flashback to the junior prom in the movie version of this story, the Black son taking sips from a flask, laughing, loud and alive. Let's say the Black son promised the Black mother he wouldn't drink too much, wouldn't disrespect his date. Let's say he abides those things but concedes she didn't say shit about smoking weed. And let's say she didn't say shit because the Black mother and the Black son are both secret weed smokers. And that's really why the Black mother loves TGI Thursdays. Remember, it's Thursday, and on Thursdays, she loves a little weed with her wine to make thin her thick wanting. The Black son, he likes it because it makes the girl he likes giggle. Let's say he's 17 and just learning how to get girls to giggle. Let's say she's 40 and trying to get a little giggle herself. You see what I'm saying? Stop me if you've heard this murder before. It's 2014, Thursday. There's a Black mother and a Black son, and the mother is home alone on the couch, and her son is walking back to the knockoff apartment alone late. No, let's say it's dusk. It's better if it's dusk. If this story has a little light in it, let's say it's early autumn dusk and the Black son is walking home. He has a bike, maybe for the sake of the story. Let's say he had a bike, but the bike is wrecked. Let's say the Black son didn't like that bike anyway. Don't like none of the knockoffs the Black mother buys. The Black son is type ungrateful, is 17, has been drunk, but not this Thursday, just a bit high, just half pissed at the giggling girl for flirting with some other boy. Let's say some white boy, even though she's also Black, one of the only Black girls in his school. And the Black son is angry because they're supposed to go together, them being the only ones. We can all understand that, right? So the Black son is walking mad. The Black mother is home high, both waiting and not waiting for the unambiguous rush of reefer in with the wind of her son through the door. She doesn't want him to smoke, but the Black mother ain't a hypocrite. She scratched together a bike for him, moved him to this right side of the city for the schools. Let's say the schools are better here, even though the school is full of talkback white kids who buy cars with their leftover allowances. And meanwhile, the Black mother burned through 2 savings and 2 men who were not the Black son's father to get him these bike easy streets, to get him that 10 speed leaned up against the wall in the hallway. Okay, so the Black son does have a dad that is gone, but it's not what you think. The Black dad wants to be home, but can't because the Black dad is a patriot overseas fighting in a who knows when but long ago waged war. Let's say there's a montage of the Black dad at war, dodging shrapnel, wrapping wounds, laughing with his fellow soldiers in a desert bunker somewhere. See, that keeps the story fresh. If the Black family loves America, respects America, drinks her wine and watches her TV and wears her flag upright on the bloody sleeve of their fatigues. Let's say both the Black mother and the Black son are proud of the Black dad. Let's say the Black mother even has a sticker for the Marines on the bumper of her van. Let's say she drives a van so that the story is more wholesome, but let's acknowledge that the Black mother is also a Black woman who couldn't wait, who wouldn't wait for the end of a war to be held and warm as a deep red in her veins. Let's just say she has needs, is strong and secure, but not all virtue with her hand-rolled joints, her love of vodka and boxed wine. Let's just say she gets sick of her Black son's smart mouth sometimes, cusses, once raised her hand to him because, let's just say she needs these Thursdays, lives for these Thursdays, the house empty of the Black son's sweaty demands. Let's just say she loves him, even while she is both waiting and not waiting for him to come home safe. And I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that the Black son is not safe, okay? Let's say the police presence has increased since the dadless Black family has come. Let's say some white girl's mother finally thought it time to talk about rape. Let's just say that tonight the Black son has done nothing but fight with his girlfriend, smoke like his mama smokes, walk slow and alone in the cool crisp of an almost night, and still will not make it home safe. The Black son is not safe, and still, can't you see? Won't you see that somewhere in this story there has been already plenty enough reason for him to die tonight? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was wonderful. And thank you, Miles. And thanks to Artist Space and especially our technical director, Izzy Dow. Now we'd like to bring the audience into the panel so we can all applaud Lauren and Michael and chat together for a while. After that, Segue is going to take a holiday break. Our next reading will be Tonya Foster and Ron Silliman on January 9th. I'm looking forward to seeing you all then. Izzy, would you please bring the audience into the panel?